Hi everyone, how's it going? I'm assuming everyone will let me know if they cannot hear me, and I'm excited to be here. I like the sound of everybody in the chat, or the reading everything in the chat that's going on. Welcome to our weekly live training. I like that everyone's like SketchUp Tuesday and SketchUp Wednesday. Coming up, we do have a training on a Monday, so I know it gets a little bit tricky with scheduling. But this live training is going to, can everybody hear me okay? Can somebody say yep in the chat? Yes, okay. So this live training is going to be importing custom textures and why we do it, how I do it, the different uses for it, and finding good textures and bad textures and things like that. So I'm just reading the chat. Okay, so as always, I will try to keep up with the questions in the chat or in the Q&A area if you want to ask. If I don't see it right away, I will come back to it. And at the end, we'll also have hopefully some time for questions just about anything you have SketchUp related or any suggestions you have for future webinars. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to share my screen. And I just got a new computer and I just installed this extension. So bear with me, and we're going to see if we can do this. All right. Everybody seeing this model in their full screen? Or are they seeing a split screen of me and the model? Yes, both. Split screen. All right, how about now? I know this is so tricky how these webinars fall. Perfect, thank you, Dawn. It's so tricky how these webinars work with switching between. I'll get better at it someday, I promise. But anyway, so to illustrate today's topic, I'm going to use this model that I built for a residential project in Morro Bay, about 15 minutes from here. And since building this model, we've moved on to an entire house model. You can see that it's not a full house. It's just a living room, dining room, and a kitchen. It's a pretty small house, but I think for today, we're just going to focus on the kitchen. So this will suffice. And I'm going to move somewhat quickly, but this replay will be available at the same link we are watching it on now. Okay, so why do we need to import textures? Well, SketchUp comes with a library of textures, and if you click this paint bucket right up here, or the letter B, and you click on this brick icon, you can see that there is a library of different textures. We've got stone, roofing, and I guess I should back up a little bit here and say that it's the materials window is one feature in SketchUp that is pretty different on a Mac and a machine running on Windows. So for the Windows users, please bear with me while I try my best to remember how it's running differently on your machine. I've only seen it a few times. So you may have a different icon here other than the brick. But either way, you do have a library of materials. And some of them are okay, not too bad. Looks like I haven't really been in this landscaping one much since I don't do much exterior, but we've got tile and they're okay. And so to apply this material, you just simply click on it and it will be attached to your paint bucket. So when you click it, you fill in the face of whatever you just clicked. So that could be our backsplash. And that looks okay. It's not terrible. Some of them are pretty outdated. Like this one, it's pretty busy. And you can see you're pretty limited. It only goes down to about there. So I'm going to undo that. All right. Sorry, bear with me for a second here. So let's test out a few custom textures. And okay. Sorry, I'm looking through my notes real quick. I think I skipped over a part that I wanted to tell you guys about. Anyway, we're going to move on. Okay, so you probably all know if you have used SketchUp before, you know that that they have a library of materials, and some of them are okay, some of them are outdated. So the reason we bring in a custom material is because our clients want to see something very specific. They don't want to see this tile. This is not the tile that they're hoping to see in their kitchen. They want to see the tile that you are picking out together. Maybe they have their heart set on it, or you have your heart set on it. Either way, you want to show it in your model and represent it as best you can. So you could go on to a website, and maybe you go on the manufacturer's website, and maybe a flooring manufacturer. And you find what you're looking for. You find a specific flooring. And I'm going to find one that I grabbed. Okay, so let's say that you have your heart set on this reclaimed wood floor. And this is the actual sample from the manufacturer's website. This is the image. And this image is okay. It's not terrible, but it's nice that it's shot straight on from the top. It's nice and level. But we're going to go ahead and import it, and you'll see why it actually isn't completely perfect to use as a custom texture. So to do that, all we need to do, we're going to put it on this floor surface. So all we need to do is go to File, Import, and find that image. This is reclaimed wood. I'm going to click on it. If it's grayed out, you may need to go to All Supported Image Types, and then Use As Texture. You don't want to use this image because it won't repeat. Use As Texture and import. Okay, now you can see it's attached to my cursor. So to apply it, again, I'm going to click, and now I can scale it as needed. So I'm just going to scale it here. Sorry, that first one was click and release. I don't need to drag my mouse. I just click and release again. Okay, so it applied the texture, but you can see it didn't really apply it in a method that we really would like. I mean, it might be okay if we were doing a close-up, possibly, whoop, I went outside the wall here. But because it has shine, because it has shine on one side, you can see the seams, it's not seamless. So that's what we're really looking for in good quality textures, is a seamless texture where you can't really notice going from one line to the other. And we could probably edit this in Photoshop and work on it a bit, but that's a lot more work than I'm willing to do for every single texture that I need to present to my client. So instead, what I do is I go to a few different websites. There's a few that I like, and I'll show those to you now. Let's see. Okay, so this is one that has really great textures. It's not the best looking website, but they have some really great free textures, SketchUpTextureClub.com. And they give you 15 free textures a day. So what I do is I go in this textures bank, and you can pay for the to be a premium member and get more textures and higher quality textures. But they have a bunch of different great seamless textures here. So what I would do would be to come into their wood floors area and find the closest representation that I can to that wood floor. So it's not going to be exact, but if I can find something close, then that's more ideal than having a really ugly floor. So you can see they have a bunch of different ones here. We've got wood planks that are a little more rough looking and reclaimed looking, like I was looking for. But when we apply these, they're going to be more seamless. Another one is textures.com, and they also give 15 free textures a day. And I think this used to be CG Textures. Yeah, cgtextures.com. So this is another great place to get them. And I know that seems like a lot of work in the beginning, but once you start to develop a library of textures that you keep in your computer in a folder, then you'll have your go-to textures and find new ones for each project, and it'll become a lot more efficient as you go. Close this. Okay, so let's go back to our model. I'm going to import a texture that I found. Oh, I can't read the HTML on the texture. So the two, somebody's having trouble with Chrome. Okay, sorry, Gina. Okay, can't read the HTML address. So the two websites were just textures.com, and the other website was SketchUpTextureClub.com. Okay, so I'm going to import a texture that I found on SketchUp Texture Club. So again, File, Import, and I found this old wood board. And I'm just going to say that this is going to represent what we were looking for. So it was attached to my cursor. I clicked and released, click and release, and that looks, as you can tell, a lot better. I'm going to click off of that. That looks so much better than it did before. We can't really see the seams. It's a nice clear photo. So you can see the difference between this and that. It's so much better. Okay, so now let's go ahead and manipulate this texture a little bit. I don't want my my planks to run in this direction. I'd like them to run in this direction. So to manipulate that, I'm going to right click on it and go down here to texture and hit position. And it's going to come up with 4 pins. Okay, 4 pins. And the blue and the yellow pin, I don't really use as much. This one distorts the texture. Again, I don't really want to distort it. And this one also slightly distorts it a little bit. But this one can move it around. And that's helpful if you need a board to line up in a certain spot underneath the cabinet, or maybe tile needs to line up in a certain spot. And this green pin can rotate our texture so that our boards run in a different direction. And it can also scale it. Having trouble. Okay. So as I drag it outward, it's going to scale our texture. And then hit enter. And now our boards are running in the correct direction. All right. So let's move on. The next thing we're going to do is the backsplash. All right, let's move over here to backsplash. And I think I've done a webinar in the past about backsplash, good pictures, bad pictures. It's the exact same thing as I was explaining on the floor. There's a lot of really bad, I mean, when you look at a website, a backsplash picture, you might think, oh, that looks like a great picture. But if it's shiny on one side and not on the other, like if you're getting some reflection of light, you're going to be able to see it on this backsplash. So I think that I downloaded a backsplash image. You know what? I did not. So I'm going to go into my textures. And I'm going to pull a backsplash from here. And I think that one of these is in my course, but let's just go ahead and pull this white one. Actually, let's back up. There's another way to bring in this tile, which is really handy. So let's say that I want to bring in a specific tile and I know the actual scale of the tile. So that black and white one we had in there, let's say I know that those are 4x4 tiles. So again, I know that this is slightly different. I pressed B for the paint bucket, or this guy up here. I know that this is different on a PC than it is on a Mac, but bear with me. So I'm on a Mac. So I created a blank space here by pulling this down, or you can do it under tile. You can do it under colors and model. I'm going to right click on this space and say new texture. And it's going to bring up those folders. I'm going to go in my textures area, tile. I'm going to find this tile, open. And it's going to ask me what the scale is and if I want to name it. So I could name it And I'm going to say that it's, what did I say before? Let's just say 8 inches. And it's going to constrain that proportion unless I uncheck this link. And I'm going to say OK. So now I can use this just as I would with any of their other library in here, and just apply it to a face using the paint bucket tool. So now this is nice because I can show the client exactly how, and I can move it around again, exactly how their tile will look to scale in their kitchen. So they can get a good idea if that is too busy or not busy enough, or whatever it is that they're hoping for in this tile. Okay, so let's keep moving on. Let's talk about paint color. This is a really popular request from my clients, and I'm sure that anybody who does drawings gets this request. They want to see, they have a paint color they like, or you're recommending a paint color, and they say, I want to see it in the space in the drawing, and they think that it's going to look exactly like it will in the space. And I always give them a small warning. It's a good representation of what the paint color will look like. But of course, like we all know, paint shows up differently in each room. Each room has different size windows. It's oriented differently. There's just so many things about the room, you know, the color of the flooring that bounces that specific light. It's all going to show up differently. So always warn your client about the paint color in a drawing, that this is to represent it and give us a good palette for what it, you know, a general palette of what we're going for. But this is not going to be an exact representation of how it will look, even once it's rendered. We can try our best, but it's not necessarily going to be exact. Okay, so for this client, let's pretend they had their heart set on this Benjamin Moore paint color. I think it's called Asphalt or something like that. Okay, so I'm going to go to File, Import, the exact same way, Ashland Slate. Okay, so all supported image types use as texture. Click on that and import it. And of course, it's a totally, completely seamless color, and I don't need to scale it, so I'm just going to click anywhere and click there, and it will apply it to that face. Okay. But I want to apply it to every cabinet. If I click B for bucket, it's going to apply that tile because that was the last thing I used from this, this library. So if I go into Colors in Model, it's going to think, okay, now I can see all of the materials that I brought in, and I can find that Ashland slate here. And now it's attached to my paint bucket. Now, I don't want to have to go around and click on every single surface because that would take me quite a while with my cabinets. So when I was building these cabinets, when I drew the initial rectangle, I changed the color to a slightly different color than the walls so that I can use a few different tools. So if we hold down Option, let's try it right here. You can see that there's a face here and faces on the inset. So if I hold down the Option key, and on a Mac it would be holding down the Control and press it, every adjacent face with that same color will turn to the new color. If I hold down Shift here, you can see that these weren't exactly adjacent, but they still changed. So Shift changed every color. This is difficult to explain. Every color that was that previous color, it changes to the new color. So because I changed it to a slightly different white than the walls did not change. We can try that with the walls. Let me hold down Shift. So every color that is this white color, you can see it's almost the entire model changed to that. Hold down Option, and it's only what's adjacent. But pretty much every wall was adjacent to each other. Even though this looks gray, it's just to show that it's on a different face. It's actually the same white color. So let me see if I can find an adjacent. Nope, they're all connected. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? So shift is everything that was that color changes to the new color. And option or control, if you're on a Mac or on a PC, option and control is every color that's adjacent to that face. Okay, so we've changed our cabinets to that nice Benjamin Moore color to get a good feel. So let's keep moving. We're going to do the countertop, and then we're going to do a piece of artwork. All right, so I'm just going to go to import, and I'm going to do this travertine type material right here. And again, I'm just going to click anywhere and scale it. And I might rotate that so that the veining runs the other way, the opposite way. It might be okay, but we're going to keep moving. So again, if I go to my paint bucket, it's the blue, or that Ashland slate gray. So I need to go into colors and model and find that so that I don't have to re-import it every single time. So now, let me get this out of the way. So now it's attached to my paint bucket. So you can see, even though this might not be everybody's favorite color scheme, you can see how this has really changed our model very quickly from that gray, that monochromatic model. Now we have wood flooring. It feels more like an actual kitchen. Can you show how to remove a texture if we don't like it, i.e. the floors? Okay, so you can just go ahead and paint it back to the original color. So, I mean, you could go undo, or you could just grab the original white up here and just paint it white again. Or you can just find a texture that you like and reapply it in the same face. It's not going to be layered underneath it. You're just changing the face of that. So this is my entire floor face. So because I changed the color to white, the wood flooring is gone. It's not underneath it. Okay, does that make sense? Sorry, just click the undo. All right, so now we are going to add in a piece of artwork. And I did this in our photo wall, tutorial, but it didn't quite work as I had hoped because I was drawing in 2D and I'm used to drawing in 3D when I add the photo walls. So it was a little bit scattered, and I apologize for that, but I want to go ahead and demonstrate that again here for those who missed that. So I found a piece of artwork on Minted, and it was 40 by 30 inches. So the best way the way that I like to do it is just grab your rectangle tool, R for rectangle, click and release, and drag in the orientation that you'd like. I'm just going to say 40, 30 to create a 40 by 30 rectangle. And it doesn't really matter where on the wall it is. I mean, of course, you don't want to draw it crossing over this geometry because I've ungrouped all of my walls to show you this, but we don't want them to stick together. But it doesn't really matter at this point where on the wall it is because I'm going to group it together, Command G, or Edit, Make Group. And now I'm going to work on it, and I can move it around with my Move tool on the wall. So the actual artwork is 40 by 30, but I want to give it a small frame. So I'm going to double click on it so I can work in the group, and I'm going to offset it, F or this icon up here. Click and release and drag it outward. And I'm just going to give it a 2-inch frame. So I just hit 2, enter. So now this is still the 40 by 30, and this is a 2-inch frame the entire way around. And we can pull that out with our push-pull tool, 1/2 inch or so if we'd like, and apply a wood texture or just paint it a simple gray there, whatever, however you like to do it. But what we're going to do right now is bring in the artwork as a texture. So File, Import, and I'm going to find that artwork. Oop, I think I did it in the wrong orientation, but I'll turn it around. So import. You can see it looks kind of huge. So I made my frame facing the wrong way, but I'm gonna, let's see, I think if I flip this, so I'm gonna position this guy, we are gonna flip it, and we're gonna move this pin to the corner. And now we can continue to scale it as we need. All right, I'm gonna hit enter. And you can see it was repeating, but it will only apply itself to this face. And now I'm gonna flip this guy. And now I can move it around. And that was the move tool. Because it's grouped, it comes up with these crosshairs when we use the move tool. M for move. And now I can move it around the wall. Whoop. All right. So you can see that our kitchen looks a lot more realistic now. Okay, one more thing in textures. Another thing that I failed to mention in the photo wall webinar was how to, I talked a little bit about adding distorted images and fixing them, but I didn't talk about the proper way to use our fixed pins. So I'm going to show you, this is the painting that we used in that webinar. This is a painting that my friend Kathy did. And as you can see, I took the photo at an angle. And if we were to put that image in here, it would still show it at an angle unless we fix it. And of course, we don't want to show our clients artwork like this. And the reason I'm showing you this is because they might see a piece of artwork in a gallery and they know the dimensions of it, and they might send you the photo and say, hey, I really want to see what this would look like to scale in my living room or in my, whatever bedroom. And for us, the best way to show it is not distorted, of course. So instead of having to go into Photoshop and changing it, we'd like to change it within SketchUp. So I'm going to double click into this group again, and I'm going to import it. All supported image types, use as texture, import. And I'm just going to click and release, click and release. It's going to repeat. Oh, it flipped it for me. That was nice. All right. So now I'm going to click on it, right click, texture, position. And it's going to come up with those 4 pins again. And we could move them around if we want, and we could use these to distort it and fix it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on it again and uncheck fixed pins. Now it's going to come up with these 4 gray pins. And we could use these again to stretch it out. But what I'm going to do is click and release, and I've grabbed this pin. And I'm going to put it on the corner of this painting. So I dropped it there, clicked and release, click and release again, drop it here. I'm just going to go around to each pin and do that. Okay. Oop. Sorry. Let me do that again. Fixed pins. Okay. Now, when I click and drag them, I can click it to each corner. And this is going to be distorted because, slightly because my frame isn't the exact same size, or the exact same proportion, but you're going to get the idea. And just drop that pin. I might have to zoom in a little bit. And hit enter. And now we can see, it used to be a landscape picture, but we stretched it out a bit just for the sake of learning. But now you can see that it is no longer distorted. Our client can see it nice and flat in their kitchen. And again, that is just right clicking on it, on the face, texture, and then repositioning it by unchecking those pins. And that is a really handy tool. All right, does anybody have any questions while I check my notes real quick? I want to make sure that I covered everything. Check the Q&A. So is Jamie Riley in the chat? Jamie, you had asked, I tried to import a texture, but it wouldn't let me draw over it for a floor tile. What did I do wrong? Can you explain a little bit more about what you mean? Did you import it as an image or as a texture? Wanted to draw corner shelves. Wanted to draw corner shelves over the top of the floor texture. Yeah, if it didn't repeat itself, oh, you did email me. I'm sorry. I haven't checked my email since this morning. Yeah, if it doesn't repeat itself, then you probably imported it as an image. I was right when we started. Sorry about that. I can check that afterwards and check in with you and see where you went wrong or what was going on there. Laura, it didn't repeat itself. Yeah, okay, so it was imported as an image. Laura, can you share where to get the appliances and fixtures? I'm glad you asked that because next week, the webinar is all about 3D model, the 3D model warehouse. And if you go to, let's see, if you go to Crowdcast and click on my name, you'll see all the webinars that I'm offering. And next week's is the 3D warehouse. So we're going to cover well-made models, not so well-made models, and models that will make your drawing run more slowly, moving your 3D models within your drawing, and scaling models to fit your floor plan. So I'm going to cover all of that, including appliances and furniture, how to move them around and scale them properly in next week's webinar. So please join me for that one. If you wanted to show some landscape outside a window, would that be a texture too or an image? That's a great question. So you could import it as an image, and you would have to flip it on its side. So let's see here. Maybe I'm trying to think if I have. You can also find those in the 3D warehouse. So let's just pretend that this was a landscape. And Katya, if you want, you can chime in on this. Katya, if you're still on the chat. But you would just use this as an image. And what I like to do is I just drop it, scale it, and then I like to flip it on its side using my move tool. And I know that this isn't quite a landscape, but now you can see I've applied a glass texture to this, and now I can see it out the window. So you can use that method and move it around as needed. If you wanted to put some trees, you could add some 3D models outside the window. Trees are one of the things, if you do a truly 3D modeled tree, it will make your drawing run much more slowly. So I would add those at the end. They do look the nicest if you just want a few trees out front. But they also have 2D face me trees, and that's a flat face. And it will just always face wherever you're standing. And those are nice because they don't make your model run nearly as slowly as adding a 3D tree. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this guy. And in the warehouse, they have curved ones, they have domes, and so on. All right. And then, so next week is the 3D warehouse and 3D models scaling webinar. And then the week after that, I believe it's going to be on a Monday, but I just added a new webinar. And I know a lot of people have been asking, how do you measure when you're on site using SketchUp? Because in my courses, I say, once you get really familiar with it, you can bring your laptop to the site for that on-site measure. and just use that instead of sketching on a piece of paper. So usually the process is you sketch on a piece of paper, go back to your desk, and you transfer that to whatever modeling software you're using. But I really like to use SketchUp on site and get my measurements and draw them directly into SketchUp right then and there. And I know that some people on Facebook have posted that they would never do that because it'd be too distracting. But I actually will never go back to the paper, the pen and paper or pencil and paper method, because I've just had too many instances where I get back to my desk and the numbers either don't add up, or I realize that I forgot to add in something, some small detail, and I either have to call the client and get that information or do another site visit and get that information. Dawn, I'm afraid of losing that piece of paper. Me too. So I just, we're fighting the paper war, and we get overwhelmed by how much paper we have to keep track of. And I love having my initial drawing in SketchUp, because then I know my numbers add up and I have all the details I need, hopefully, if I can remember to add them all, of course. But I hate the pen and paper for all those reasons, especially because I never have enough room on the paper. From Jamie. Yes, I completely agree. So I'm going to go over how I do that in one room, and the details that I add, and then how I clean it up when I'm back at my desk, because I don't want to have to sit there in the client's house and make a full-on floor plan. I just add a bunch of notes in a similar way as we would on a piece of paper, which is scratching in notes. And then cleaning it up back at my desk. So that'll be a good one. I'm excited to share that process with you. Dawn says, that will be my goal, to be comfortable with SketchUp. Yes. And you don't even have to be completely comfortable with 3D modeling to get to that point. You just have to be comfortable with drawing geometry to represent the shapes that you need to draw a floor plan, which are basically lines, rectangles, and using your tape measure. So I know you'll get there soon, Dawn. Okay, so we're going to wrap this one up early unless anyone else has any questions. Thanks for bearing with me as I looked through my notes. As always, if anyone has any requests for training topics or questions of any kind, just email me, Tammy at sketchupforinteriordesigners.com. And if you want to stay up to date on the live trainings, be sure to join the newsletter. If you go to the info space of this webinar, you can find a link to the newsletter there at the bottom of the info. Okay, Sierra asked real quick, is there a webinar for importing CAD files into SketchUp? So I wish that I had known CAD before I learned SketchUp, and I just don't. There's a really great, on SketchUp's website, on their, they have a lot of great information on their learning section, and they have a whole list of the process for importing a CAD file, because there is some cleaning up, some prep work that you need to do before you bring in that CAD file and after you bring it in. So I actually learned SketchUp before I became an interior designer, because I knew that's what I wanted to do, and SketchUp was the very first thing that I learned. And so this is kind of why it's always been part of my process. So I've never learned CAD. We didn't learn CAD in school. I learned Vectorworks, which I've never used, haven't used since. And I just have never needed to import those files. I know that there is probably a few instructors out there. If Katya is still on the chat, she could probably help out with that if anybody wants to take lessons from her. But I try and keep my entire workflow native to SketchUp. So let me switch back over so I can talk to you all real quick here. Let me see if well, anyway, that doesn't really matter. So anyway, I keep my entire workflow native to SketchUp, from schematic all the way to presentation, design documentation, even to submitting permit paperwork. So, so that is, I like to keep it all in one spot. So sorry, I wish that the guys in my office say it's easier to draw in SketchUp than to import it from CAD. Yeah, I agree. I think that from what I've seen from other people trying to import CAD, the lines don't come across as clean, and the faces don't always come across. You have to then draw over the CAD file. So I would, if possible, I would just try and keep it all native to SketchUp, and then it's a cleaner process. All right, everyone, I really appreciate you joining me. And if you want to watch the replay, it's going to be back at the same link. And until next week, have a great rest of the day. Bye.